2:30 a.m. Logan Bennett pushed through Miller's diner glass door, keys cutting through silence. The neon light buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across empty vinyl booths. His breath caught. There, in the corner booth, a young woman lay curled like a broken bird. Coffee shop uniform from across the street. Moonbeam Coffee. He'd seen her through the window before. Her brown hair spilled across the cracked vinyl, shoulders rising and falling with exhausted sleep. A leather purse pressed against her chest like armor. Clean sneakers. This wasn't some vagrant. This was desperation in designer denim. Logan's phone vibrated. Mia's sleeping soundly, staying overnight as planned. His 8-year-old daughter, safe in their small house, while this stranger sought refuge in his carefully constructed world. 3 years hiding from his $47 million past. 3 years playing the humble diner owner instead of Bennett Tech Solutions' former CEO. His hand trembled as he reached toward her shoulder. He had no idea that this moment would shatter everything he'd built to protect his family. Logan's fingertips barely grazed her shoulder when the young woman jolted awake. Her eyes snapped open, brown and wide with the kind of fear that came from running. She scrambled upright, nearly knocking over an empty coffee cup. "I'm sorry, I'll leave right now," she stammered, already reaching for her purse. Her voice carried traces of education, refinement that didn't match the wrinkled uniform or the exhaustion etched around her eyes. Logan stepped back, hands raised in surrender. Something about her panic struck him as familiar, the way she moved like someone always ready to flee. "Hold on," Logan said, his voice deliberately calm. "I'm Logan, the owner. Are you okay?" The woman paused, studying his face in the dim light. Her breathing slowed slightly, but her grip on that leather purse remained white-knuckled. "Brooke," she whispered after a moment. "I work at Moonbeam Coffee across the street." She gestured toward the window where her beat-up Honda Civic sat under the streetlight, hood slightly ajar. "My car broke down, couldn't get a ride home. I just needed somewhere warm to wait until morning." Logan followed her gaze to the disabled car. The rational part of his brain, the part that had built a tech empire, calculated the risks of getting involved. But the father in him, the part that thought of Mia sleeping peacefully at home, couldn't walk away. "When did you last eat?" he asked, already moving toward the kitchen. Brooke's cheeks flushed. "I'm not looking for charity." The pride in her voice was unmistakable, even wrapped in exhaustion. Logan paused at the refrigerator, something clicking into place. This woman wasn't just down on her luck. She was fighting to maintain dignity in circumstances beyond her control. "Good," Logan replied, opening the industrial refrigerator. "Because I'm terrible at charity, but I make decent late-night food." He pulled out ingredients with practiced efficiency, muscle memory from countless nights alone in this kitchen. The familiar ritual of cooking grounded him, reminded him why he'd chosen this simple life over corporate boardrooms. "Tell me about the car," he said, setting a pan on the gas burner. The flame caught with a soft whoosh, filling the silence. Brooke hesitated, then slid into a booth where she could watch him work. Her story unfolded in careful, measured sentences. Transmission failure earlier that evening. The tow truck quote that would eat up 2 weeks of tips, working double shifts at Moonbeam Coffee to pay for nursing school tuition. The studio apartment she shared with 2 roommates who were probably wondering where she was. Logan listened while he assembled a grilled cheese sandwich, noting how she never complained, never asked for sympathy. Just stated facts like she was reading from a report. There was something almost clinical about her detachment, as if she'd trained herself not to feel the weight of her circumstances. "Nursing school's expensive," Logan observed, flipping the sandwich with more force than necessary. The memory of his own student loans, before the tech boom, before everything changed, surfaced unexpectedly. Brooke's face lit up for the first time since she'd awakened. "Worth every penny. My mom was a nurse before she—" Her voice trailed off, and Logan didn't push. He'd learned that silence often revealed more than questions. Instead, he slid the golden sandwich across the counter and opened his laptop. The expensive MacBook Pro that looked absurdly out of place in this small-town diner. "I need a night shift supervisor," Logan said, fingers moving across the keyboard with corporate precision. 11 p.m. to 6 a.m., Tuesday through Saturday. $18 an hour plus tips. Brooke stared at him like he'd spoken in a foreign language. "I already have a job." Logan didn't look up from the screen where he was already drafting an employment contract. "Keep it. This is supplemental income until you save enough for car repairs." His typing paused only when he realized she hadn't responded. When he glanced up, Brooke was studying him with the intensity of someone trying to solve a puzzle. "Why would you do this?" The question hung in the air between them. Logan closed the laptop, considering his answer. 3 years ago, he would have had corporate reasons, strategic justifications. Now, sitting in this diner at nearly 3 in the morning with a stranger who reminded him of his own daughter's potential future struggles, the answer was simpler. "Because everyone deserves a second chance," he said finally. Brooke's eyes searched his face for deception, for the catch that surely had to exist. Finding none, she slowly nodded. "When do I start?" 2 weeks passed in a rhythm Logan hadn't expected. Brooke arrived each Tuesday night at exactly 10:55 p.m., already changed into the simple black pants and white shirt that served as the diner's uniform. She moved through the space with careful efficiency, learning not just where things went, but why they went there. Logan found himself staying later than necessary, ostensibly to oversee her training, but really because her presence filled a silence he hadn't realized was weighing on him. She never pried about his late-night management style or the expensive technology scattered around his office. The changes were subtle at first. Coffee that actually tasted good instead of merely caffeinated. Tables wiped with attention to detail rather than hurried swipes. But it was the way she interacted with the late-night regulars that caught Logan's attention. Jimmy, the long-haul trucker who stopped by every Thursday around 2 a.m., mentioned that the new girl remembered he liked his coffee black with 2 sugars. Patricia, the nurse from Cedar Falls General who grabbed sandwiches before her 6 a.m. shift, started smiling when she walked through the door. Brooke had a gift for making people feel seen. "Revenue's up 25% on night shifts," Jose reported to Logan after Brooke's 2nd week. The day cook had been with the diner longer than Logan and rarely showed enthusiasm about anything. "She understands how to run a business." Logan nodded, but Jose's observation nagged at him. There was something about Brooke's approach to customer service that felt almost professional, trained rather than intuitive. The way she organized inventory, streamlined cleaning procedures, even optimized the coffee brewing process, showed a systematic thinking that went beyond natural talent. One evening, Logan arrived early to find Brooke on the phone outside, her voice tight with stress. "I told you I need more time," she was saying, pacing back and forth under the streetlight. "No, I can't ask for an advance. That's not how this works." Logan hesitated at the door, not wanting to eavesdrop, but unable to ignore the desperation creeping into her tone. When she noticed him, Brooke quickly ended the call and hurried inside, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "Family expectations," she said. When Logan raised an eyebrow. "Nothing I can't handle?" The deflection was smooth, practiced. Too practiced. Logan filed the observation away alongside the growing list of small inconsistencies he'd noticed. The way Brooke's vocabulary sometimes slipped into business terminology. How she instinctively understood profit margins and operational efficiency. The expensive leather purse she carried that didn't match her careful budgeting. Most telling was her phone, a latest model smartphone that cost more than most of their employees made in 2 weeks. When asked about it, she'd simply said it was a family plan necessity. 6 weeks into her employment, Crisis struck Logan's carefully ordered world. Mia woke up with a fever of 102 degrees, too sick for school and too young to leave alone. His usual nanny was visiting her own sick mother 3 hours away. The substitute babysitter he sometimes used had her own family emergency. Logan sat on the edge of his daughter's bed, watching her flushed face, feeling the familiar weight of impossible choices. Single parenthood meant every decision carried the potential for guilt. "I need to stay home with Mia," Logan told Jose over the phone. "Can you handle the morning shift alone?" Jose's sigh was audible. "Boss, Marcus called in sick too. We're already running thin." Logan looked at Mia, who was mumbling in her fever dreams, and felt the walls closing in. This was the exact situation he'd tried to avoid by leaving corporate life, the constant tug-of-war between responsibility to others and responsibility to his daughter. His phone rang before he could figure out a solution. Jose mentioned Mia's sick. Brooke's voice was clear, decisive. "I can cover the day shift after working all night." Logan felt something loosen in his chest. "You've been here until 6 a.m. You need sleep." But Brooke was already problem-solving in that systematic way of hers. "Bring Mia to the diner. Quiet booth in the back. I'll keep an eye on her between customers." The offer was simple, practical, and completely unexpected. Logan found himself agreeing before his cautious nature could intervene. 3 hours later, Logan carried a drowsy Mia through the diner's back entrance. She was wrapped in her favorite blanket, the one with cartoon cats that Claire had given her for her 5th birthday. Brooke had already prepared the corner booth with extra pillows and positioned it so she could watch from behind the counter. "She's beautiful," Brooke said softly, helping Logan settle Mia into the makeshift sickbed. There was something wistful in her voice, a longing that made Logan wonder about her own family situation. The day unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. Brooke managed the lunch rush while monitoring Mia's temperature, brought her water and crackers, even hummed soft lullabies when the fever made Mia restless. Logan found himself watching this stranger for his daughter with the tenderness of someone who understood children's needs. "You're natural with kids," he observed during a quiet moment. Brooke's smile flickered. "I have experience with younger siblings back home." The phrasing was careful, revealing nothing while seeming to explain everything. By evening, Mia's fever had broken. She giggled at Brooke's silly faces and insisted on helping fold napkins, despite her weakened state. Logan felt something shift inside his chest. Not romantic attraction, not yet, but recognition. This woman fit into their lives with an ease that should have been alarming. Instead, it felt like finding a missing piece to a puzzle he hadn't realized was incomplete. When Mia fell asleep on the drive home, she mumbled about the nice lady who tells good stories. The following week brought an unwelcome visitor. An expensive sedan pulled up during the slow Tuesday afternoon, gleaming black paint reflecting the diner's neon sign. The man who emerged wore a $3,000 suit and carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting what he wanted. He ordered coffee and studied Logan with calculating intensity that made every instinct scream danger. Logan approached the table with practiced casualness, but his pulse had quickened to the rhythm he remembered from hostile corporate takeovers. "Jonathan Pierce," the man said, sliding a business card across the worn formica. "Cedar Falls Development Consultants. We represent clients interested in acquiring properties in this area." Logan glanced at the card. Expensive paper, embossed lettering, completely generic contact information. Red flags everywhere. "Not for sale," Logan replied, but Pierce's smile suggested he'd expected this response. "Everything has a price, Mr. Bennett. We've done our research." The way he emphasized research sent ice through Logan's veins. Pierce leaned back in the booth, completely at ease. Successful businessman who relocated for family reasons. Admirable dedication to small-town values. Each word was chosen with surgical precision, designed to demonstrate knowledge without revealing sources. Logan's mind raced through possibilities, corporate rivals, private investigators, simple internet searches. How much did this man actually know? "Our client could offer very generous compensation for the right property," Pierce continued, sipping his coffee like they were discussing weather. "Who's your client?" Logan kept his voice level, but Pierce's smile widened. "Confidential at this stage, but I assure you they're a legitimate development company with excellent references." He stood, leaving a $20 bill on the table for a $2 cup of coffee. "Think it over, Mr. Bennett. Opportunities like this don't wait indefinitely." Logan watched the sedan disappear down Main Street, then immediately pulled out his phone to research Cedar Falls development consultants. No website, no local business registration, no paper trail, just expensive business cards and veiled threats. That night, Brooke noticed Logan's agitation immediately. "Bad meeting?" she asked, wiping down tables with unusual intensity. Logan realized she'd witnessed the entire encounter from behind the counter, had probably heard every word. "Nothing I can't handle," he said, but Brooke's frown suggested she wasn't convinced. "That man," she said slowly. "He looked familiar. I can't remember where I've seen him before." Logan's attention sharpened. In his experience, when someone looked familiar but couldn't be placed, it usually meant they were being deliberately deceptive about their identity. Pierce returned the following week with a preliminary offer that made Logan's blood run cold. $800,000 for a property worth maybe $200,000 on the open market. The folder Pierce placed on the table contained glossy renderings of luxury shopping complexes and boutique hotels that would completely transform Cedar Falls' character. "Prime location for high-end development," Pierce explained, spreading the images like playing cards. "Revitalization that benefits the entire community." Logan studied the renderings, recognizing them as the kind of projects that displaced working families in favor of wealthy tourists. "I need time to consider," Logan said, though every fiber of his being wanted to refuse immediately. Pierce's nod was magnanimous, but his eyes remained cold. "Of course. Though I should mention that opportunities like this create momentum. Other property owners might become more motivated to sell once word spreads about development plans." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. "Say yes, or we'll make it impossible for you to say no." After Pierce left, Logan noticed Brooke seemed unusually agitated, but when he asked, she claimed to be fighting off a headache. The pressure campaign began with surgical precision. A health inspector arrived unannounced, finding minor violations that required expensive corrections. The fire department cited outdated electrical systems that needed immediate upgrades. The county tax office requested a comprehensive audit of the diner's financial records going back 5 years. Each agency claimed routine inspection procedures, but the timing was too convenient to be coincidental. Logan recognized the coordinated harassment tactics from his corporate days, death by 1,000 regulatory cuts. Logan found himself working 18-hour days, juggling inspectors, contractors, and lawyers while trying to maintain normal operations. The quality time with Mia shrank to hurried breakfasts and exhausted bedtime stories. "Daddy looks worried all the time now," Mia observed one morning, studying his face with 8-year-old directness. "Like before Mommy died, when you worked too much." The innocent observation hit Logan like a physical blow, reminding him of the promise he'd made at Claire's graveside, that he'd never again choose work over family. Brooke noticed Logan's deteriorating state and quietly began staying extra hours without pay. She coordinated with contractors, organized paperwork, even picked up Mia from school when Logan got trapped in meetings with lawyers. "You don't have to do this," Logan protested, but Brooke's response was always the same. "I want to." There was something fierce in her determination, a personal investment that went beyond employee loyalty. Logan found himself wondering what drove her to care so deeply about his problems. 2 months after Pierce's first visit, Logan sat in his office, surrounded by mounting bills and legal notices. The mathematics were brutal. Between violation fines, legal fees, and lost revenue from constant disruptions, the diner was hemorrhaging money. At the current rate, bankruptcy was maybe 6 weeks away. Logan stared at the numbers until his vision blurred, remembering similar calculations from his corporate days. The difference was that then, failure meant loss of profit. Now it meant loss of everything he'd built to protect Mia's stability. That evening, Mia appeared in the office doorway wearing her favorite pajamas, the ones with dancing unicorns that were getting too small. "Daddy, are we moving again?" The question was asked with the matter-of-fact acceptance of a child who'd already lost too much. Logan's throat tightened. "What makes you think that?" Mia climbed onto his lap, her small weight grounding him in the moment. "You have the scared face, same as before we came here. Will we find another home?" Logan wrapped his arms around his daughter, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. Through the office window, he could see Brooke's car pulling up for another night shift, despite everything falling apart around them. The sight of her reliability in the midst of chaos crystallized something in Logan's mind. He'd spent 3 years running from his past, but maybe it was time to remember what he was capable of when pushed too far. "I won't let anything bad happen to you," he told Mia, and for the first time in weeks, he meant it. At 11 p.m., Logan walked into the dining area where Brooke was methodically cleaning tables with unusual intensity. The repetitive motion seemed to calm her, but Logan could see tension in the set of her shoulders. "You came back," he said. She looked up, meeting his eyes directly. "It's my job." The simple statement carried weight that went far beyond employment obligations. "Even after everything that's happening?" Logan pressed. Brooke set down her cleaning cloth and faced him fully. "Especially because of everything that's happening." Logan pulled out a chair and sat across from her. "I haven't been completely honest about who I am." Brooke's hand stilled, but she didn't seem surprised. "I figured something was different. Expensive laptop, the way you handle business decisions, how you think about problems. You're not a typical small-town restaurant owner." Her observation was accurate, unsettling in its precision. Logan took a deep breath and made a choice that would change everything. Bennett Tech Solutions, enterprise software development for Fortune 500 companies. I built it from nothing, sold it for $47 million when my wife died. The confession hung in the air between them. Brooke's expression didn't change, but Logan caught a flicker of something. Recognition? Relief? What happened to her? She asked softly. Logan's voice cracked as he told the story he'd never shared with anyone in Cedar Falls. The board meeting that ran late. Claire taking a taxi instead of waiting for him. The drunk driver who ran the red light on Broad Street. The phone call that ended his old life and began this careful exile. "I sold everything and moved here with Mia," Logan continued. "I wanted a simple life, to be present for my daughter, never again choose success over family." He gestured around the diner. "This place was supposed to be our sanctuary. But success follows you, doesn't it? Money attracts money. Power attracts power." Brooke nodded slowly, understanding flickering in her brown eyes. "Pierce knows your real identity." It wasn't a question. Logan's silence was confirmation enough, which means media exposure, questions about why I left the corporate world, people from my past tracking us down, everything I tried to escape. Logan stood, pacing to the window where he could see Pierce's threats made manifest in the form of citation notices taped to the glass. "There's something I need to tell you too," Brooke said quietly. Logan turned, noting the way she'd straightened as if bracing for impact. "I know Jonathan Pierce." The words hit Logan like cold water. "You know him?" Brooke's hands were shaking now, all pretense of calm abandoned. "His real name is Jonathan Petrov. He works for Petrov Development Group." She took a shaky breath, and Logan felt the world tilt beneath his feet. My father's company. The statement was simple, devastating, impossible. Logan stared at her, pieces of a puzzle he hadn't known existed, suddenly snapping into place with terrible clarity. Your father? Logan's voice was barely above a whisper. Brooke stood, moving to the window as if she could see into her own past. Viktor Petrov, Russian immigrant who built a real estate empire by systematically destroying communities exactly like this one. Her reflection in the glass looked fragile, translucent. I've been running from him for 4 years. Logan's mind raced through every conversation they'd had, every careful deflection, every moment she'd seemed to know more than she should about business operations. My real name is Brooklyn Petrov, she continued, her voice gaining strength with each admission. I was supposed to inherit everything, company worth over $500 million, but I couldn't stomach what we did. Displacing working families, gentrifying entire neighborhoods, crushing small businesses for pure profit margins. Logan felt something cold settle in his stomach. The phone calls, the family pressure. Brooke nodded, turning away from the window to face him directly. He tracks me down every few months, threatens to cut off my trust fund, destroy any employer who helps me, hurt anyone who gets close to me. Tears finally spilled over, streaking down her cheeks. I never meant for him to find me here, never meant to put you and Mia in danger. Logan stepped toward her, but Brooke held up a hand to stop him. I have to leave tonight, before he uses you against me any further. The finality in her voice made Logan's chest tighten with something approaching panic. Wait, Logan said, grabbing her hand before she could turn away. Pierce versus Petrov? Understanding dawned in Brooke's eyes. Jonathan uses American aliases for his business dealings. He's Victor's son from his first marriage, my half-brother. Her voice turned bitter with old pain. Father's favorite child, the one willing to do whatever's necessary for the family business. Logan processed this information, feeling pieces of the conspiracy click into place. Father and son, using the daughter as unknowing bait to identify targets. How did they find you? Logan asked, but Brooke was already covering her face with her hands. I've been so careful for 4 years. Used cash when possible, avoided credit cards, never stayed anywhere too long. She looked up, devastation written across her features. The car repair. I had to use my credit card for the tow truck. They must have flagged the transaction, been watching me work here for months, watching you interact with me. The diner's front door chimed, cutting through their conversation like a blade. Jonathan Pierce walked in. But this time he wasn't alone. 2 large men flanked him, professional muscle with cold eyes and expensive suits. Hello, dear sister, Pierce said, his voice dripping with false warmth. Brooke flinched as if she'd been physically struck. Logan stepped protectively in front of her, every corporate instinct screaming danger. Touching family reunion, Pierce continued, settling into a booth as if he owned the place. Though Brooklyn, I must say working as a waitress is rather beneath your MBA education. Logan felt Brooke tense behind him, but she remained silent. What do you want? Logan asked, though he suspected he already knew. Pierce's smile was all teeth, no warmth. Simple family business, Mr. Bennett. Sister comes home where she belongs, you sign property transfer documents for reasonable compensation, everyone continues breathing normally. And if we refuse? Logan kept his voice steady, but Pierce's smile widened. Mr. Bennett, you have a beautiful 8-year-old daughter. Cedar Falls Elementary School. Very predictable daily schedule. Logan's blood turned to ice water. The threat was specific, personal, designed to paralyze him with fear for Mia's safety. Victor doesn't make idle threats, Brooke whispered behind him, her voice hollow with old terror. Pierce leaned back in the booth, completely relaxed. So here's our final offer. Brooklyn returns to the family business immediately. You sign property transfer papers tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. sharp. Clean, efficient, No complications for anyone involved. One of his men shifted slightly, jacket falling open to reveal the outline of a shoulder holster. The message was clear: compliance or consequences. Logan felt trapped between impossible choices: surrender everything he'd built or risk everything he loved. "We need to discuss this privately," Logan said, stalling for time he didn't have. Pierce checked his expensive watch with theatrical precision. "Nothing to discuss, really. You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow. Choose wisely, Mr. Bennett." The three men stood as one, moving toward the door with practiced coordination. "Oh, and Brooklyn." Pierce paused at the threshold. "Father sends his love. He's very much looking forward to your homecoming." After they left, the diner felt hollow, haunted by threats and broken dreams. Brooke slumped into a booth, all fight drained from her body. "I'm calling him right now," she said quietly. "I'll agree to come home. This has to end." But Logan was already shaking his head, something hard forming behind his eyes. "No." The word came out sharper than intended. "Logan, you don't understand what you're dealing with." "I said no." Logan pulled out his phone, scrolling to a contact he hadn't used in 3 years. "They think they know who they're dealing with. They're wrong." The phone rang once before a familiar voice answered. "Morrison Legal Services, this is Marcus." Logan felt a surge of the old confidence, the corporate killer instinct he'd buried under 3 years of small-town life. "Marcus, it's Logan Bennett. I need the full legal arsenal." The pause on the other end was long, shocked. "Holy shit, Logan. We thought you were dead. What kind of trouble are you in?" "The kind that requires federal law enforcement involvement," Logan replied, watching Brooke's eyes widen. Marcus's tone immediately became professional, focused. "I'll catch the first flight to Columbus. Don't do anything stupid until I get there." Logan hung up and turned to Brooke, who was staring at him like she'd never seen him before. "Time to show them what happens when you threaten a CEO's family." For the first time since Pierce had walked through their door, Brooke's expression held something other than despair. It looked almost like hope. The next 8 hours passed in a blur of strategic phone calls and careful planning. Logan contacted every connection from his corporate life: federal prosecutors who'd handled his company's government contracts, IRS criminal investigators who owed him favors, private investigators with law enforcement backgrounds. The network he'd thought abandoned reactivated with surprising speed when a $47 million CEO called in old debts. By dawn, he had commitments for resources that most people could only dream of accessing. Marcus Morrison arrived on the 6 a.m. flight from Seattle, looking every inch the high-powered attorney who'd helped Logan navigate countless corporate battles. "Petrov Development Group," Marcus said without preamble, spreading files across the diner's largest booth. "We pulled everything overnight. Multiple federal investigations spanning 2 decades for bribery, tax evasion, money laundering, RICO violations. Nothing definitive stuck, but there's enough smoke to suggest a very large fire." "Enough to work with?" Logan asked, though he could already see the answer in Marcus's grim smile. "More than enough if we can document systematic extortion patterns across multiple jurisdictions." Marcus looked up from the files. "Logan, this isn't corporate litigation anymore. These people have body counts. They're legitimately dangerous." Logan thought of Mia sleeping peacefully at home, trusting her father to keep her safe. "I know. That's why we're not playing by corporate rules." At 8 a.m., Brooke entered through the back door, looking like she hadn't slept. "Victor called 6 times overnight. He knows I'm not coming willingly." Her voice was hollow, defeated. Logan showed her the laptop screen displaying a comprehensive timeline of federal investigation evidence. "Look at this. Financial records, property acquisitions across 15 states, zoning manipulation patterns, clear RICO predicate acts spanning 2 decades of systematic community destruction." "This is just the beginning," Logan explained, scrolling through page after page of documented crimes. They've systematically targeted 63 small towns across the Midwest. Same strategy every time. Identify key properties, pressure owners through regulatory harassment, acquire land for luxury developments that displace entire communities. Brooke studied the screen, her face growing increasingly pale. I recognize most of these projects. Victor celebrated them as major business victories at family dinners. How many families displaced total? Logan asked, though he suspected the answer would be staggering. Brooke's voice was barely above a whisper. Tens of thousands, maybe more. She covered her face with her hands. I knew it was extensive, but seeing it mapped systematically like this, God, what have I been running from? What have I enabled by staying silent? Logan reached across the table, covering her hands with his own. You were protecting yourself. Now we're going to protect everyone else. At exactly 9 a.m., Pierce arrived with his usual punctuality and arrogance. He carried a leather portfolio and wore the satisfied expression of someone expecting easy victory. Excellent decision, Mr. Bennett. The contracts are prepared for immediate signature. Logan didn't move from behind the counter. I'm not signing anything. Pierce's confidence flickered for the first time. I'm sorry, what did you say? Logan slid a thick federal folder across the counter. Criminal complaint for extortion, racketeering conspiracy, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit violence against a minor child. Filed at 7:30 a.m. with the FBI Cincinnati field office. Pierce opened the folder with hands that weren't quite steady. His face went through several color changes as he scanned the contents. You have no actual proof of criminal activity. Recorded phone conversations, comprehensive financial documentation, witness statements from 12 states, parallel evidence from 3 ongoing federal investigations. Logan interrupted. Including detailed testimony from someone very close to your family operation. Pierce's gaze snapped to Brooke, understanding and fury warring in his expression. You treacherous little... Careful how you address my business partner. Logan's voice went arctic cold. Marcus stepped forward with professional precision. Mr. Pierce, I strongly recommend reviewing page 37, security camera footage from last evening, timestamped 11:43 p.m., crystal clear audio recording of direct threats against a minor child. Pierce's face drained of all color as he flipped to the relevant page. The diner's security system had captured everything. Voices, faces, even the outline of his bodyguard's weapon. Federal prosecutors take child endangerment extremely seriously, Marcus continued in his courtroom voice. As do federal judges, as do juries consisting primarily of parents themselves. Pierce's hands were shaking now as he closed the folder. Your father is currently in federal custody. Logan interrupted smoothly. Arrested 4 hours ago at Cleveland Hopkins Airport, attempting to board a flight to Moscow. Remarkable what happens when a former tech CEO with active government security clearance makes certain strategic phone calls. The transformation in Pierce was instantaneous and complete. Gone was the smooth confidence, replaced by the desperate calculation of a cornered animal. This is simply aggressive business negotiation. This is over, Logan said with finality. You have exactly 30 minutes to leave Cedar Falls permanently. Any further contact with me, my family, or this business constitutes violation of federal emergency restraining order. Pierce's voice cracked. What restraining order? Marcus produced official papers with government seals. Federal protective order issued 2 hours ago by Judge Morrison in the Southern District of Ohio. Hearing scheduled for next Friday morning. Unless you prefer discussing these matters with federal marshals, I suggest you start driving. Pierce grabbed his portfolio with shaking hands, all pretense of control abandoned. At the door, he turned back to Brooke one final time. Family loyalty means nothing to you. His voice carried the bitter disappointment of someone whose worldview had just collapsed. Brooke stood straighter than Logan had ever seen her. Family protects each other. You just proved you were never mine. Pierce stared at his half-sister, Victor's daughter who had chosen conscience over blood loyalty, then walked out without another word. The door chimed his complete defeat. "Is it actually over?" Brooke asked into the sudden silence. Marcus was already checking his secure phone. "Federal raids on Petrov Development Headquarters and satellite offices are happening simultaneously across 4 states as we speak. They'll be occupied with asset seizures and criminal defense for the foreseeable future." Logan nodded, but tension remained coiled in his shoulders. Legal victories didn't guarantee physical safety, and men like Viktor Petrov had long memories. "There's one more thing," Brooke said quietly. "My trust fund becomes accessible when I turn 25 next month. $12 million, legally mine, regardless of Victor's situation." Logan and Marcus exchanged glances. "I want to invest it here, not as charity, but as comprehensive community development initiative. Affordable housing, small business microloans, infrastructure improvements that Cedar Falls actually needs and wants. Using your father's money to directly counter his business model," Logan observed. There was poetry in the justice, using Petrov's own wealth to rebuild what he'd destroyed. "It won't restore the communities he demolished," Brooke said. "But maybe it prevents future destruction. Maybe it helps families like the ones we would have displaced stay in their homes." Marcus was already taking notes, his legal mind working through the complexities of such an undertaking. 2 weeks later, normal rhythms began returning to Miller's diner. The fake customers Pierce had planted disappeared, replaced gradually by genuine locals who came for Jose's cooking and stayed for the sense of community. Logan found himself working reasonable hours again, able to pick up Mia from school and help with homework. The violation notices vanished as quickly as they'd appeared, inspectors suddenly finding the diner in perfect compliance with all regulations. Brooke threw herself into planning the community development project with the same systematic approach she'd brought to managing the night shift. She met with local business owners, surveyed families about housing needs, researched sustainable development models that preserved small-town character while improving quality of life. Logan watched her transform from a woman running from her past into someone actively building a better future. 1 month after Pierce's defeat, Logan found Brooke in her usual spot after closing, wiping down tables with meditative precision. "You know you don't have to keep doing that," he said, settling into the booth across from her. She looked up, smiling. "I like the routine. It's meditative after months of chaos." They worked together in comfortable silence, partners in ways that went far deeper than business arrangements. "Any regrets about everything that happened?" Logan asked as they finished the last of the cleaning. Brooke considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "About confronting Victor and Jonathan? None whatsoever. They needed to be stopped." She paused, studying Logan's face in the dim light. "About putting you and Mia in danger initially? Many, but also none, because it led us here." Logan understood exactly what she meant. Mia appeared from the back office where she'd been helping organize receipt files while Logan and Brooke worked. "Are we completely safe now?" she asked with 8-year-old directness. Logan and Brooke exchanged an honest glance. Such a direct question deserved a truthful response. "We're much safer," Logan said finally. "And we're definitely together." Mia considered this seriously, then nodded. "Good enough for me," she declared, satisfied with honesty over false promises. 8 months later, on Labor Day weekend, Miller's diner had transformed into something Logan never could have envisioned. Multi-generational families crowded around combined tables, children weaving safely between chairs, elderly residents sharing stories with newcomers attracted by Brooke's affordable housing initiative. The diner had become the beating heart of a community that was thriving rather than merely surviving. Brooke coordinated the kitchen like a seasoned conductor, working alongside Jose, 3 new local hires, and volunteer community members to prepare a Labor Day feast for anyone without family plans. Traditional barbecue, fresh corn, and Mia's special contribution, apple pies shaped like hearts, because, as she explained to anyone who would listen, love feeds people better than regular food. Logan watched his daughter distribute her creations with the serious concentration of someone performing important work. "Daddy, look!" Mia pointed excitedly toward the main window. "Mr. Jimmy brought his whole family." Logan followed her gaze to see the usually solitary trucker sitting somewhat awkwardly with a woman and teenage son. He remembered Jimmy mentioning ongoing divorce proceedings and custody battles. Today, the man had chosen vulnerability over pride, connection over isolation. "First time eating here together?" Logan asked while refilling Jimmy's coffee. "Kids wanted to see where Dad spends his meal breaks," Jimmy replied, ruffling his son's hair with unpracticed affection. "Figured today was good for new beginnings." Logan nodded, understanding completely. Small victories accumulated into major transformations when people were willing to take risks on hope. Around the dining room, similar scenes played out. Families reconnecting, neighbors becoming friends, community healing itself one conversation at a time. Marcus Morrison arrived with his wife and energetic toddler, legal briefcase forgotten in favor of sippy cups and coloring books. "Final update on the federal case," he said quietly when Logan approached their table. Viktor Petrov was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, plus $50 million in restitution to affected communities. Jonathan pleaded guilty to witness intimidation and got 8 years. Marcus bounced his daughter on his knee, watching her giggle at Mia's silly faces across the room. Petrov development was permanently dissolved under court supervision. Marcus continued. All assets seized, all ongoing projects halted. The families they displaced will receive compensation, and several communities are being rebuilt with sustainable development models. Logan felt a deep satisfaction at this news. Justice served not just punishment, but restoration. Exactly what communities like Cedar Falls needed to heal and thrive. By 4 p.m. The crowd had naturally dispersed. Volunteers enthusiastically tackled cleanup, while families headed home for afternoon naps and backyard relaxation. Logan found Brooke sitting on the diner's front steps, watching early autumn wind carry golden leaves down Main Street. The late afternoon sun caught highlights in her brown hair, and for the first time since he'd known her, she looked completely at peace. "Tired?" Logan asked, settling beside her on the sun-warmed concrete. Brooke made room, their shoulders touching companionably. "Perfect tired," she replied, different from crisis management tired or nursing school finals tired. She'd graduated the previous month with highest honors, already implementing community health programs throughout Cedar Falls. This showed me exactly where I belong professionally and personally. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their adopted town settle into holiday afternoon rhythm. Somewhere, families gathered around grills and picnic tables. Somewhere else, people visited graves with fresh flowers and quiet memories. Here, in front of Miller's diner, there was simply peaceful contentment born from hard-won victories and chosen connections. Logan thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. Crisis transformed into opportunity, isolation transformed into community. "Mia asked me something important yesterday," Brooke said, breaking their comfortable silence. Logan's attention sharpened, recognizing the careful tone she used when approaching significant topics. She wanted to know if I was planning to become her official second mommy. Logan's breath caught completely. The question he'd been expecting for months had finally arrived through his 8-year-old daughter's characteristic directness. "How did you answer that?" Logan asked, his voice carefully neutral. Brooke turned to face him directly, brown eyes serious and warm. "I told her that families form in many different ways, that sometimes the strongest families are the ones who choose each other intentionally rather than accept accidents of biology." Logan felt something settle in his chest. Not relief exactly, but recognition of truth spoken aloud. She seemed satisfied with that answer. Brooke continued, for now. But I suspect she'll want more specifics eventually. Logan considered this evolution carefully. 8 months ago, his primary concern had been maintaining protective anonymity for himself and Mia. Now he found himself navigating complex questions about family structure, community responsibility, and choosing love over security. The transformation was remarkable and slightly terrifying. We're hardly a traditional family arrangement, Logan observed, thinking about all the unconventional elements of their situation. Brooke's smile was warm, confident. Traditional is vastly overrated anyway. Look around. Half the families in there today are non-traditional in some way. Single parents, blended families, chosen families. What matters isn't the structure. It's the love and commitment inside it. Through the diner window, they could observe Mia organizing leftover desserts with serious concentration, her small face scrunched in determination. She had Claire's natural optimism combined with Logan's methodical precision, but also something new, Brooke's gift for bringing people together around shared purpose. She has your protective instincts, Brooke observed, and your stubborn refusal to give up on things that matter. Logan studied his daughter, seeing Claire's influence alongside newer characteristics that spoke to the expanded family they'd accidentally created. She also has your ability to see potential in everyone, he replied. Your gift for making people feel valued and seen. They sat together cataloging their child, not through biological connection alone, but through the deeper bonds of chosen family and shared commitment to each other's well-being. That evening, after Mia had fallen asleep upstairs exhausted from a day of enthusiastic community hosting, Logan and Brooke completed their final cleanup routine. The diner was restored to its ready-for-tomorrow condition, but the atmosphere felt different than it had months earlier. Then the space had been Logan's refuge from complexity. Now it was their launching pad for building something larger than themselves. Brooke, Logan said, hanging up the dish towel with deliberate precision. I need to say something important. She turned from the coffee machine, giving him complete attention in the way that had become natural between them. Logan took a breath, choosing his words carefully. When Claire died, I thought survival was a sufficient goal. Keep Mia physically safe, avoid emotional pain, control everything controllable. He gestured around the transformed diner, thinking about everything they'd built together. This place was supposed to provide simple refuge from complexity, a place where we could hide from the world and just exist quietly. Brooke nodded, understanding the impulse completely. But life had different plans entirely, she said softly. Logan stepped closer, drawn by the warmth in her voice. You had different plans, Logan corrected. You saved this place, but not from Pierce's threats or your father's ambitions. You saved it from my fear of caring deeply again, of building something that mattered enough to fight for. Brooke's eyes filled with tears, but they were happy tears. We saved each other mutually, she replied, reaching out to touch his arm gently. Outside, streetlights illuminated empty sidewalks, preparing for tomorrow's possibilities. Inside the diner, endless potential waited, coffee to brew, stories to collect, connections to nurture carefully. Their routine had become enriched with unexpected grace moments, small daily choices that added up to transformation. Logan felt the rightness of it all, the way individual decisions had accumulated into something beautiful and sustainable. What happens next? Logan asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Brooke's smile was radiant, full of confidence in their shared future. Next, we discover what develops naturally. We keep building this community, keep choosing each other, keep making space for love in all its forms. It wasn't a promise of fairy tale endings or guarantee against future loss and pain. It was something better: commitment to presence, showing up consistently, choosing each other daily through whatever came. Logan turned off the diner light systematically, leaving only warm glow from street lamps filtering through windows. They walked upstairs together to the apartment where Mia slept peacefully, surrounded by stuffed animals and dreams of heart-shaped apple pies. The image of his daughter sleeping safely, while the two adults who loved her most planned their shared future, felt like completion of a circle Logan hadn't realized was broken. On the diner counter below, Mia's apple pies remained in covered containers, heart-shaped offerings from generous small hands trying to nourish her chosen community. Tomorrow, regular customers would discover them and smile at this childish contribution to adult healing. Tonight, they represented what builds between people over time. Not grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but consistent small acts of nourishment offered freely, without expectation of return. Miller's diner rested peacefully in the darkness, ready for another day of ordinary miracles. Outside, Cedar Falls slept under a canopy of stars, its residents dreaming of possibilities that hadn't existed before three strangers decided to fight for something worth keeping. The town had become more than the sum of its parts, transformed by people choosing community over isolation, hope over fear, love in all its imperfect, intentional, heart-shaped forms. 18 months later, on a perfect spring morning, Logan flipped pancakes while Brooke reviewed community health program evaluations, and Mia practiced piano scales between bites of Mickey Mouse-shaped breakfast. The rhythm of their days had settled into something sustainable and joy-filled. Through the kitchen window, they could observe young families moving into the third phase of Brooke's affordable housing development. Teachers, healthcare workers, service employees able to purchase homes in the community where they contributed daily value. It was a quiet revolution, accomplished not through corporate takeover or political statement, but simply through people investing consistently in each other's success. The diner phone rang, and Jose answered cheerfully, taking a reservation for a lunch meeting where local business owners would discuss expanding the childcare cooperative. Positive change rippled outward through intentional choices, each small decision creating space for larger transformations. Logan caught Brooke's hand across the breakfast table, marveling at how natural the gesture had become. "Still absolutely no regrets?" he asked, though he could already see the answer in her eyes. "Only that it required crisis to discover this," she replied, squeezing his fingers gently. Their love had been forged in fire, tested by impossible circumstances, and emerged stronger for having been challenged. Mia looked up from her piano book with 8-year-old seriousness. "Are you two getting married soon?" The direct question hung in the air between them, requiring honest response rather than deflection. Logan and Brooke exchanged meaningful glances, approaching the conversation they'd been building toward for months. "What would you think about that possibility?" Logan asked, turning the question back to his daughter. "I think love comes in different shapes," Mia replied with wisdom that seemed far beyond her years. "Like pancakes and families and apple pies and music. The important thing isn't the shape. It's that it feeds people and makes them happy." She returned to her piano scales, as if she hadn't just delivered profound insight about the nature of human connection. Logan and Brooke stared at each other, then began laughing at the beautiful simplicity of truth spoken by a child. Outside their kitchen window, Cedar Falls awakened to another ordinary day made extraordinary by people choosing each other consistently, choosing community deliberately, choosing love in all its imperfect, intentional, heart-shaped forms. The sun rose on a town transformed not by grand gestures, but by the accumulated weight of small kindnesses, daily commitments, and the radical decision to believe that everyone deserved a second chance at happiness.